Welcome to Desert Sage Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Beffert, coming to you on the 2nd of September 2023 from my home in western Arizona desert. Thank you for being here. From my perspective here today, it looks like we have a storm brewing. Thunderstorms are expected, and out here in the desert you might not think that's a big deal, but in a lot of areas here in the desert, thunderstorms can be tragic in terms of their impact. We get heavy rains that the desert can't absorb, and roads get washed out, and every year somebody fails to heed the warnings, the signs that tell you not to cross the roads, and they do, and people drown in their vehicles. So they can be pretty significant, and so when you see the warning signs, ideally, like us out here, our roads are dirt roads, and they're graded, but the storms can take them out. So obviously we prepare. We have backup power systems. We have solar, some limited solar available right now. Obviously we're working on our outdoor garden area, that project that you can see behind me. Backup water supply, 7,000 gallons worth. So we've taken precautions in the event we do have storms, and although we have power out here at our home, we're on a pretty sketchy infrastructure, and although it's new, it's limited. It doesn't have any redundancy, and if the lines go down, we could be out for power for days. So we take precautions and we prepare. I'm using this analogy here to talk about the topic that I'm going to be talking about today, and that's the storm that I see brewing in this country. And over at the macro level, the sovereignty of our nation is at stake, and at the micro level, our individual sovereignty is at stake. And as we get into this discussion, hopefully I'll make it a little bit clearer to you on both levels, the macro and the micro level. But in the last walk and talk, I talked about myopic vision, and we described that as nearsightedness in the physical sense, physical vision, but it was also described as a lack of imagination. And I discussed how people can't imagine that people are that evil that would look to depopulate our planet, decide who gets to procreate and who doesn't, and all of those things, commit democide in the most heinous ways, to include a biological agent masquerading as a you-know-what. Couldn't imagine that, and they couldn't imagine how people could conspire, all the people that would have to be involved in a conspiracy at that level. Couldn't imagine that. Then I talked about the Manhattan Project and compartmentalization and hierarchical structures, like pyramids and that, and hopefully that gave people a little bit of an idea that they were wrong about that concept. And there was other lack of imagination. People can't imagine themselves to be a big part of the problem. They can't imagine themselves, which is why they don't want to see the truth, and we talked about that. Don't want to look at the truth because it's too ugly, or I'm afraid of the truth. I might find that I'm complicit or have been complicit in evil indirectly, that I was a good person, doing bad things, type of thing. We can't imagine that we could be the source of our own suffering and lack of knowledge and inability to see truth when it's right in front of us. We have that nearsightedness, that myopic vision. Talked about our belief systems and how they can prevent us from seeing the truth, whether it's religious belief systems or political belief systems. Our own belief systems, which many of them originate from childhood. If you look back, I used the analogy before about where you most likely got your religious beliefs from, where you most likely got your political beliefs from, and things of that nature. And so we talk about imagination and the lack thereof. People can't imagining how people could have, well, anecdotally, I hear this all the time. Well, I know somebody who died from COVID. That's anecdotal evidence. That's a personal experience that you have, and the reality of it is that you don't know what they died from. You know what you've been told. And so in many cases, people have been, people that believe that anecdotally, because they know that somebody has died with COVID, not of COVID, they can't imagine that the hospital protocols might have been the reason that these people died. They can't imagine in their mind that using remdesivir, which shuts kidneys down and causes kidney failure and the lungs to fill up with fluid, which was another one of Dr. Fauci's mandates and recommendations. Force remdesivir on them, force the ventilator on people, and then at the same time suppress known effective treatments like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. They can't imagine how, and I'm explaining it to them as I'm laying it out there in front of them. This is how it could happen, folks. And we don't, the pandemic wasn't a pandemic at all. What you had most likely, they said, well, I can't imagine, that them manufacturing or weaponizing a virus, and using that against us to enslave us. And then I laid out the history of the DOD and the Pentagon and the hierarchy of the military and the things that they've done in the past. So it's very difficult for people to see the truth, because a lot of times they don't want to see the truth. They ignore the truth. That ignorance that we talked about, that's ignoring the truth and embracing the lie, the deception. But I wanted to talk a little bit too about one of the biggest factors that keeps us from seeing the truth, the reality about who we are and the circumstances and the reality around us on the outside. And that's one of the three components of ourself that I described in earlier videos, and that is we have the personality or the public face that we put on. We have the ego or the false identity, the false sense of self, and we have the essence or the true nature of who you are. And the one that keeps us from being able to see the truth about both who we are and the reality of what's occurring around us is the ego. It's the ego. That false identity, who we believe that we are in our mind versus who we really are. And we attach ourselves primarily to our identity based on what we do as a profession in many cases. I'm a police officer, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm this, I'm that. I'm a politician, a teacher, whatever, based on what they do, their profession. When you ask people who, when they introduce themselves, the first thing they tell you is what they do, not who they are. Then generally it's religious and political affiliations. If you can get that deep, they identify as either a Republican, a Democrat, Independent, Catholic, Lutheran, Mormon, whatever the case is. They'll identify next by those things. And then generally it's those beliefs, those false beliefs about that we've been told, we've been indoctrinated to believe from a young age, and I've talked about the methods of manipulation in previous videos, which happen to be, by the way, two of the videos that YouTube took off right away. Methods of Manipulation Part 2 and Methods of Manipulation Part 4. Took them down for violating their terms and conditions. I've also had them taken down for violating their COVID policies. But go to my website, desertstagepodcast.com, under media page 1 or media page 2 up at the top, and view those 2 presentations if you get the time. I actually drill down and get into the details about mind manipulation and all the tactics and methods that the media and the CIA and the intelligence agencies and these think tanks and these dark occultists use to manipulate you, your thoughts, your emotions, and hence your actions, which I talked about in the last walk and talk as well. But our egos are probably one of the biggest factors that keep us from seeing the truth about who we really are, why we're here, all of those things. You know, the ego tells us that if you're a Christian, you know all you need to know about Christianity because you go to church on Sunday or every other week or whatever and get spoon-fed whatever it is that you're told to believe. Or you think you know the truth about, you know, politics or geopolitics, you know, because you watch the news, you know, or read certain articles or magazines. And yeah, there are some truths in all of those things, including religion, but you have to have the discernment, the abilities to, you know, to separate the truth from the lies, from the deception. And again, things like our ego prevent us from seeing the truth. And if you can't see the truth, you're not going to be able to do much about it. If you don't make a proper diagnosis of the problem, like I talked about in the last video, you know, you're going to be whacking away at the symptoms. All the problems are outside of me. And, you know, back to my point is that, yeah, you know, the mind fuckers have worked a number on us from since we were little kids. And in many cases, your own parents have worked a number on you. You know, on that continuum, anywhere from satanic ritual abuse all the way to their own passing on their own traumas from previous generations onto you. You know, so you know, it's important to be able to do that shadow work that I've talked about many, many times. First of all, to admit that you were wrong. You know, I've had to go through that, you know, long night of the soul, spent a long time going through that, working through my traumas, the traumas I experienced as a police officer, things that I hope my kids and grandkids never, ever have to experience, which is why I'm so thankful that none of them chose to follow in my footsteps in that regard. There is honor in that profession, in that job, in the original intent of what being a peace officer was meant to be, but it's been politicized and it's been corrupted, just like all the institutions that are now turned against us, including the 3-letter agencies, and have been weaponized to come after our individual sovereignty. So our own government has turned the weapons of propaganda, censorship, you know, coercion, force mandates, going after our weapons. As my shirt says here, the final variant, we're not suffering from you know, physiological diseases, we're in variants and things of that nature. My shirt says the final variant is called communism. We're suffering also from a mind virus, a disease of the mind. A disease of the mind. People whose minds are infected, satanically infected in many cases. And I outlined the tenets of Satanism, all the way from, you know, solipsism down to eugenics as the final outcome. And that's where we're heading. If you don't see it already, we're heading towards a eugenics, we're pushing towards a eugenics agenda and depopulation and enslavement communism, call it whatever you want. This is the physical enslavement that we're going to be experiencing here. And the psychological enslavement's coming too. You know, because people choose to seek the truth. You are not going to discover truth until you choose to seek it, till you fall on your knees and recognize that you don't know shit. You don't know the shit you don't know. And you're at the mercy of the universe, God, the all, the source, whatever you want to call it. And then you have to want to seek the truth. As you can hear, it looks like we're getting rain coming down here already. So I'll try to continue on here as long as I can without getting rained on, but get the message across here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Havasu Patriots website. I no longer manage that. I've stopped my involvement with the Patriots, both figuratively and literally. I haven't been to any of their Have-A-Pats meetings, although I've been asked to come and speak to several of the people that have split off from that group. So the website is no longer functional. I'm going to be removing links to it from my website here soon. So if you go to click on the Havasu Patriot website or the links, you're going to probably get a 404 error or something of that nature indicating that it's not available. It's unfortunate. You know, the original intent which was to educate people about their rights under the Constitution and under natural law, which was my component of it, the natural law component, went aside, and that unholy trinity of government or politics, religion and money took over after we moved out here and some of the leadership was gone. And it pretty much destroyed the efforts and the original intent of what we were trying to do. But that's neither here nor there. I don't harbor any ill will or intent towards those people. Again, they are so calcified in their beliefs, whether they're religious beliefs or their political beliefs. They believe somebody else outside of themselves is responsible for saving them, whether it's a political savior or a religious savior. And so as long as they continue to look at that as the solution to our problems, I don't want to be affiliated with that organization. Good people doing bad things. So in any case, I'm going to leave it that for now. I'm going to get soaked here, and I got to keep an eye out on my roads here. Look for those warning signs. Get your house in order, because there is a storm coming. And I don't just mean get your physical house in order, get yourself prepared. We're doing that too, trust me. I'm talking about get your spiritual house in order as well, because there is a spiritual storm, and it's going to manifest into a physical or a kinetic storm here on this plane if we can't get people to awaken to their own truth, or the truth, which is not subjective, it is objective. So that's our mission. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm targeting law enforcement and the military. If you want to find out more about my background, go look at the introductory video. And I say again, I always suggest that you start from the beginning of these videos and watch them sequentially. They're prerequisites, they're stepping stones to understanding some of the things that I'm talking about. And it'll sound like garble if you step into one of these and don't start with a good foundation of natural law, which is what I'm teaching here. So go back. But if you don't want to watch the 3-hour introductory video, in a nutshell, and this is just for clarification for people, because I talk about my career in law enforcement and I talk about the military, that's all I did. But the reality is I was an officer for about 15 years, promoted through the ranks, did the SWAT thing, was a detective and all of that. until I got taken out by another police car in a foot pursuit. I had been teaching at the college, at the academy for many years, so I'd transitioned right over to the academy, taught for 3-4 years there, was the interim director of their public safety program for a year, went to work for Nevada Post as a training officer, and then took over as the director of the Nevada Police Corps program, which was federally funded. Did that for several years, worked on curriculum development and ran training programs with federal funding, which was a unique experience. And then my last job was as the director of the Regional Public Safety Training Center in Reno, Nevada, which was a $18.5 million facility, had law enforcement, public safety, fire, EMS, and a partnership with the community college there. So I did that for about 7 or 8 years before ultimately the sheriff at the time chose to have a lieutenant run that program, and since I was an at-will employee, I was let go. So I have a wide range of background and experience. It's not just law enforcement. I did curriculum development for California Post for years. So my background has primarily been, I've been a trainer or a teacher longer than I've been a cop. You know, just for clarification. You know, but I'm using my background and experience in life in general to reach these people, law enforcement and military folks, those order followers who, if this communism, this tyranny comes like it has in the form of Nazism and stuff as in the past, these order followers, the people that stood down in Uvalde, Texas, while they knew kids were being shot on the orders of somebody else, or whether it's the officer in Maui that, you know, blockaded everybody potentially into an incinerator on the orders of somebody else. I'm trying to reach them, get them to understand the morality of what it is that they do too, and raise their level of consciousness and awareness, and get them to draw a line in the sand. Either you're going to agree to uphold moral law, primarily over man's law. You know, you're not going to enforce. The victim is the state is not a victim, and these victimless crimes, these crimes that you know are wrong. You know that morally, and you can argue all day long with your studies about how, you know, drug use and all these other things leads to, you know, all these crimes and things like that. You know, you don't understand moral law. All you understand is statutory law and case law. That's all you understand. Moral law, you've never received, most likely from your parents to begin with. You don't get it in school. They don't teach you about morality. You might if you go to a Christian education or a Christian school. You'll get some level of morality, i.e. in the form of the golden rule at the very least. And you're not taught it in the academy, for damn sure, not taught it in in-service training, and certainly aren't taught it as a prerequisite for promotions in your career. Not. You might get taught constitutional law for an hour in the academy. That's it. After that, it gets put up on a shelf, and your focus is statutory law and case law, you know, and liability and all of those things. You know, it's not moral law. You don't get any of that again. You don't get it in in-service training either. I know because when the whole COVID thing went down, I went and met with the police chief, and I was handed them a letter that showing violations 18 U.S.C. 241, 242, and all of that. My hope was that I was going to be able to get the chief of police to see what was happening here and provide me an opportunity to come in and talk about these issues, particularly moral law. But when he got wind of that, and so when I went into the city council chambers and talked to them, I gave the law enforcement agencies, particularly the command staff, a break. You know, I shifted the the focus over to the order givers, the mayor and the city manager and the city attorney, instead of the order followers, which, you know, was in the hopes that I'd be able to keep my connection with them, a positive connection, and come back later on and really give them an understanding of natural law, what it is I want to bring to their organization, training. Well, when I met with them the second time, they understood my intent and what it was that I would like to do with their agency, and obviously they didn't want to have any part of it for a couple of reasons. Number one, their officers and deputies are already demoralized to the point, just like this nation is demoralized. And that's the next step to us losing our sovereignty as a nation, is that demoralization phase of communism. But they're demoralized. They're demoralized for what they do. And I'm not saying, you know, look, you got shitty cops just like you got shitty doctors, shitty lawyers, judges. Go up and down the list, folks. Our problem is that we've been taught to hero worship these guys and gals. So these expectations that we have that aren't real cause that cognitive dissonance. When what we want to believe about them doesn't match the reality of who these people are. And if they weren't taught morality as a kid, they weren't taught morality at school, and they weren't taught morality in the academy or in continuing education or in service training, they're going to shut that part off. They're going to harden themselves away from it. They don't want to see it. And that causes that internal conflict. The difference between what they know is morally correct and what they know is legal. It causes that suffering. And when you reach a point, and I've talked about this before too, where that internal conflict creates so much suffering in you that you decide to leave. You get out. Or fortunately, if you make it out to retirement, great. In my case, the handwriting was on the wall for me. My injuries I could have rehabbed from and did rehab from. Came back, taught defensive tactics, went to the gym constantly. I could have fought that, rehabbed, and come back. But I was at a point in my life where that internal conflict, and Wendy and I had many discussions about it, between what I was seeing, the reality of what I was seeing about what I was doing, and the judicial system, and prosecutors who only gave a shit about wins. You know, when I started seeing that, and judges who were, you know, alcoholics in many cases, knew them personally, you know, so when you start seeing the reality of that, because you've experienced, because you've been in those professions, my point is that in many cases they're good people doing bad things. They've lost their moral compass is broken. These departments are not about to have somebody like me come in and talk to them about natural law or moral law and the conflicts that they have with their statutory law. They already have a huge retention issue as it is, and they already have a huge recruitment issue. They can't get people in the door anymore for a variety of reasons, and one is people see how you're going to be asked to discard your moral compass for some of the things that you're being asked to do. You know, and those of you, you know, that enjoy law and order, you know, also enjoy your sausage, but nobody likes to watch either one being made or the process. You know, so we don't see the truth for a variety of reasons, whether it's our ego, who we are. You know, cops, just like military people, doctors, you know, and even the best ones, you know, they see themselves as heroes, you know, as the good guys. And a lot of them are good people, just doing bad things. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Thank you for watching. Again, it's coming down pretty good here. Not as bad as before, but I see it coming. So I'm going to close for now. Thank you for watching. Please go to desertsagepodcast.com to my main web page, or to Odyssey to watch my videos. Many of them are still up on YouTube, the ones they haven't taken down. But just know that there are many that are up there that you won't see on YouTube, and the ones that deal with the intricacies of how they go after your psyche and your mind and manipulate you, and all of that is laid out there for you to see. I suspect they don't want you to see it. So, in any case, we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you for your time and attention. Truth, freedom.